Bruce McArthur was a 67-year-old landscaper, mall Santa, and family man. He was a husband, a father, and a grandfather. From the outside, he appeared to be mild and kind. He was also trusted to tend people's lawns and flowers. Several of Bruce's clients were unaware that their beautiful gardens were actually graves. My name is Charisse, and this is Arts and Crimes. Let me begin by saying hello and welcome. And if you'd like to help this channel grow, go ahead and subscribe or give that button a like. Don't you worry, I don't bite, promise. Let's begin, shall we? Thomas Donald Bruce McArthur was born on October 8th, 1951. The McArthur family are very religious. Bruce's father was Scottish Presbyterian and his mother Irish Catholic. His strict father made fun of him continuously. Maybe perhaps he sensed Bruce's homosexuality. He was raised on a farm in Woodville, Ontario, which is a small rural town northeast of Toronto. Bruce suppressed his true self from everyone and didn't even admit it to himself. He lived far from the free love and sexual revolution of the 1960s. In later years in his life, it might have been this experience that fueled his hatred towards an entire gay community in Toronto. He eventually married Janice Campbell. She was his high school girlfriend. Following their graduation in 1970, they had 2 children. By the early 1990s, he was working as a traveling salesman in Northern Ontario, stocking department stores with socks and underwear. Bruce's employment in the clothing trade ended sometime after 1993, and then the couple faced financial difficulties. This was partly due to legal issues connected to their then teenage son, Todd, talking to you, Todd, who was obsessively making obscene phone calls to women he didn't even know. The couple separated in 1997, and Bruce eventually moved to Toronto. Fun fact, Toronto is my home. This crime actually happened literally a few minutes away from here. Yep. Movie stars from Toronto include Jim Carrey, Mike Myers, and Eugene Levy. Wow. Anyways, Brucey Boy began to frequent the gay village located at Church and Wellesley. This area is known as the LGBTQ plus friendly community, which hosts the Pride Parade every year for Torontonians. On October 31st, 2001, a few weeks after his 50th birthday, Bruce was invited to Mark Henderson's apartment to see his Halloween costume. Bruce then thought it would be a great idea to hit that man with an iron pipe several times behind the head. Good thinking. Mark did fight back, but eventually he lost consciousness. When Mark awoke, he then called 911 and then he was taken to St. Michael's Hospital. He received horrible injuries and received several stitches in the back of his head, his fingers, and he also had to do 6 weeks of physiotherapy. After the attack, Bruce turned himself in, saying he had no memory of the incident, didn't know why he did it. He received a conditional sentence of 729 days for assault with a weapon and causing bodily harm. A conditional sentence was agreed to after psychiatric and pre-sentencing reports suggesting that Bruce McArthur was a low risk of reoffending. But seriously. According to Mark Henderson, the incident left him completely traumatized, and he did not provide a victim impact statement for the sentencing. Bruce served his first year of his sentence under house arrest instead of going to prison. His time in Church and Wellesley was restricted just for work and medical appointments only. He was basically banned from the gay village, or what I like to call it, the gayborhood. He had to stay at least 10 meters away from Mark Henderson. Later, though, he would have his conditional sentencing expunged. That's right. That sentence would be wiped away as if it never happened. During 2002, Bruce signed up with multiple gay fetish dating sites for men who were into BDSM, which is bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadism, masochism. Honestly, that's way too many letters, so I'm not sure. Yeah. It was noted in his profile that he was looking for submissive men. Bruce's expulsion from church in Wellesley was well known across the gayborhood. He developed a reputation for rough BDSM and violent intercourse. In one incident, Bruce was asked to leave a coffee house, which enraged him, and he screamed obscenities at the bar staff and all the patrons. Rude. Following the rumors about Bruce, other members of the community decided to stay far away from him. As a result, Bruce became even more resentful towards the community. Bruce started his own landscaping business. It was called Artistic Designs. I called the number, not knowing what I was trying to, I have no idea what I was expecting, but no one picked up. Just a fun fact, I don't know. You see, Bruce was often accompanied by day laborers from Southeast Asia or the Middle East. Bruce had built most of his client base through word of mouth, and most of his clients were elderly, wealthy women. During the off season, because, Toronto, we have seasons, we have snow. Oh, my heart. So during the off seasons, he couldn't be a landscaper, obviously. So Bruce would portray Santa Claus at Asian Court Mall. Yay. He would also donate floral arrangements to charities. Toronto police launched Project Houston in November 2012 after realizing, Houston, we have a problem. So dumb, but I get it. The task force was formed after a man on a cannibal website that he had eaten and killed a man in Toronto. I'm sorry. Skanda Navaratnam disappeared on September 6, 2010. So by June 2013, Project Houston had identified 2 other cases related by geography and lifestyle. Abdul Bazir Faizi and Majid Hamid Kayhan. Just like Skanda, both men were middle-aged immigrants of South Asian origin. And also, they disappeared from church in Wellesley between 2010 and 2012. After receiving an anonymous tip linking Bruce to Skanda and Majid, police interviewed Bruce on November 11, 2013. In walks Bruce, walking all jolly like a chunky monkey, and Bruce said to police that he didn't know who Bazir was, but he did regularly interact with Skanda at a gay bar. He also denied in being in a relationship with him, which was a lie. Bruce acknowledged that he hired Majid Kayhan to help with his landscaping work. Since the gay village is a tight-knit community in which everyone knows everyone, Bruce admitting to knowing 2 of the 3 victims was not a red flag to police. Brucey was treated as a witness rather than a suspect, since he was a longtime friend of Skanda's. Project Houston unfortunately failed to produce any evidence linking the disappearances to a crime or even identify any suspects. As a result, it was disbanded. Wah, wah. Following the end of the task force Project Houston, 3 more men in the gay village go missing. Saroush Mahmoudi was a married man who had children. He was reported to have gone to sleep, but the next day he was just gone. His family assumed he just went to work. Also, his family were unaware of his other life as a gay man, so police could not make the connection with him and the other missing men. Krishna Kanagarathanam was denied refugee status. He couldn't even reside in Canada. A cargo ship called the Sun Sea brought him here, as well as 500 other Sri Lankan Tamils in search for a better life. It was only because he could not be located to be deported that police realized that he was missing. Dean Lezowick was a homeless man who sometimes worked as a sex worker. Most of the time, he lived in Toronto's homeless shelters. He would ask for money or even to chat right at the corner of Church and Wellesley. Let's fast forward to April 30th, 2017. So 1 year has passed. A seventh man goes missing. Salim Assin didn't live anywhere. He basically lived out of a suitcase. And he went missing with all of his possessions. His partner reported him missing when he hadn't seen Salim for a few weeks. Salim struggled with substance abuse as well as mental illness. 2 months later, on June 26, 2017, during Pride celebrations, Andrew Kinsman became the 8th person to go missing. So Andrew was a superintendent of a building. He had a set schedule, he had set routines. People in the building took notice immediately because the superintendent responsibilities weren't being met. Within a day of last being seen, he was already reported missing. This led to a new task force. Project Prism was launched on August 14, 2017. This was the second investigation into the missing men in the gay village. Project Prism was led by Detective Hank Insignia. Apparently, I can't pronounce his last name, so let's call him Detective Hank. Okay? Cool. Detective Tank. I can't pronounce this guy's name. Anywho, Detective Hank had served on the homicide squad for over 13 years. He also has been previously assigned to Project Houston for 6 months. So police end up going to Andrew Kinsman's apartment building. They were looking for clues, any kind of clues. They were looking for signs of a struggle. They noticed that his cat was not fed, poor cat. And then police find a calendar, and they're reading through this calendar, right? They see bill payments, they see medical appointments, the usual adulting things. And guess what? They look at June 26, around 2 p.m., and they find the name Bruce. This was the same day and around the same time Andrew was last seen. That day, surveillance video outside of Andrew's residence showed a person matching his appearance approaching a red vehicle. As you can see, the video doesn't show a license plate or a clear picture of the driver. However, you can tell it is a Dodge Caravan. So police officers took screenshots of the surveillance tape and they went to a Dodge dealership. There, it was discovered to be a 2004 Dodge Caravan. There were more than 6,000 similar models in Toronto alone, but only 5 were registered to someone named Bruce. And of those 5, the only 2004 model belonged to, drum roll please, Bruce McArthur. That's right, Bruce motherfucking McArthur. So investigators go into Bruce's apartment building. They were looking for the van, but it was no longer parked at his residence. Very suspicious indeed. On October 3rd, plainclothes police officers arrived at Dom's Auto Parts in Cordis, Ontario. This is about 70 kilometers northeast of Toronto. They were canvassing for businesses looking for Bruce's 2004 Dodge Caravan. The owner of the shop actually bought the van for something like $120. Officers later found trace amounts of blood in the vehicle. This blood was identified to belong to Andrew Kinsman and Salim Assin. This DNA evidence allowed investigators to obtain a warrant to enter Bruce's apartment. So next, the police, right, they covertly enter Bruce's apartment and they clone his hard drive. The officers put Bruce's computer through forensic analysis. They were searching through the deleted files. And you never guess what they found. They found freaking pictures of all 8 missing men dead on his bed. Dead on his bed. Dead on his bed. That's not funny. I'm sorry. So all 8 of the missing men were posed either nude or in a fur coat. No life in their faces whatsoever. So then Bruce was placed under a 24-hour surveillance with instructions that he should be arrested instantly if he is seen alone with anyone. And for good reason too, because that is exactly what happened. Brucey boy, being the creep that he is, was seen picking up some young guy from the street and they were heading back to his apartment. Oh honey, no. Thinking this man's life was at risk, police quickly get out of the apartment, but they stay in the staircase, just out of sight. Once Bruce and the man entered the apartment, police knocked on their door. And get this, Bruce already had the guy naked and handcuffed to the bed. This man works quick, eh? Bruce already put a black plastic bag over his head before answering the door. I don't know, maybe he thought that his Uber Eats was delivered. I don't know. The man, he's called John. Hi.
And now, before the next show starts, let's enjoy an intermission. You'll find our snack bar chock full of good things to eat and drink.
So yeah, the man that was tied up, he's been called John in the reports I found. It doesn't seem to be his real name though, I guess. Anyway, John had arrived from the Middle East 5 years ago. He was married and hadn't told his family he was gay. Bruce met John through a dating app, and he said they'd gotten together a few times for consensual hanky-panky. He agreed to keep his relationship with Bruce a secret, and John let himself be handcuffed to the bed frame. So police rescued John and raided the hell out of the apartment. During the raid, police seized electronic devices, including cell phones, 5 computers, 3 digital cameras, and a dozen flash drives. They found multiple belongings of the victims. He kept these things as trophies, I guess. The sicko. Thing is, at the time, there were no physical bodies that have been found yet. But photographs of the victims found in Bruce's residence led to his arrest. Police executed search warrants on different properties associated with Bruce and his landscaping business. Multiple businesses across the GTA. Oh, also fun fact, GTA stands for Greater Toronto Area. So all across the GTA, they search all the properties that are connected to him. The biggest concern to investigators was Bruce's high-rise apartment in Thorncliffe Park and the Mallory Crescent residence in Leaside. The owners of the Leaside residence, Karen Fraser and her husband. Sorry, Karen, I forgot your husband's name. Oh, I'll call him Mr. Fraser. Duh. The Frasers weren't allowed at their home, so that forensic investigators could search it, obviously. The search of the property went all the way to the ravine behind the home. The search team included cadaver dogs and members of the heavy urban search and rescue team. See, these cadaver dogs took a strong interest in large planter boxes. So investigators wrap these large planter boxes and they bring them to a coroner's office. Well, let me tell you. On January 29, police announced that they have found the dismembered skeletal remains of most of the missing men. These dismembered, decomposing body parts were in 12 large planter boxes. Professor Michael Arnfield, who is a criminologist, said that Bruce's method of disposing the bodies might suggest that he's a sophisticated killer who had developed his craft, and as most serial killers begin in their 20s, the crimes could go back several decades, because remember, he's 67 at this time. So this would represent the longest run of a serial killer on record. Bruce's past as a traveling salesman suggests that police might even have like a province-wide investigation ahead of them. Continuing the search at the Fraser residence, once the weather warmed up and the ground thawed, 20 police investigators conducted excavations in the forested ravine behind the home. They began sifting through a large compost pile, and they collected human remains almost every single day of this search. On July 20th, all of Bruce's victims have been identified. Police believe that some of the murders took place at Bruce's apartment. The searches of Karen Fraser's home and Bruce's apartment made up the largest forensic investigation conducted by Toronto police so far. On April 16th, Bruce was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Skandaraj Navaratnam, Abdul Bazir Faizi, Majid Kahan, Sarush Mahmoodi, Karushna Kumar Kanagarathanam, Dean Lezowick, Salim Essien, and Andrew Kinsman. These murders occurred between 2010 and 2017. Bruce McArthur pleaded guilty to all 8 counts of murder on January 29, 2019, which removed any trial from happening. You coward. In a written statement, Toronto's Mayor John Tory called Bruce, quote, a monster that preyed on our city, that he will be put away for these heinous crimes and never know freedom, unquote. Justice McMahon, the judge, said, quote, all or most of the victims were vulnerable individuals who were lured to their deaths. No doubt on the promise of consensual sexual activity. The accused exploited his victims' vulnerabilities, whether they involved immigration concerns, mental health challenges, or people living a secretive double life, unquote. Bruce McArthur was sentenced to life in prison for each of the 8 counts. Under Canadian law, the parole eligibility in first-degree murder is 25-year increments, but he won't make it, honey. He won't make it. No. Bye, Bruce. And so, my friends, that's the disturbing case of the latest serial killer right here in my hometown of Toronto. I guess this really goes to show appearances are often misleading. So what are your thoughts on this case? Do you think there could possibly be more victims? Oh. Let's discuss it in the comments, shall we? Leave a like and a comment, and I'm also open to case suggestions. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe for future episodes. I'm going to be here every week with a new case. If you want to reach out, the description down below has all of my social thingies. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Say bye, Charlie. Bye, Charlie. Oh, bye, Charlie. He's tired.